Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 14 of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I interview a local fiddler, a member of the South End String Band, and the first musician to grace our first Fridays. Please welcome Julie Campbell. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I get to speak with Julie, and we kind of go all over the place. We start off talking about her career as a school teacher for many, many years, and then we branch off and talk about how she got involved with music, how that's influenced her life, and how she's been able to actually blend her love of teaching with her love of music. The other thing I want to mention about Julie is she's actually the very first musician we ever had here on the podcast, at our first Friday event, which we have on the first Friday of every month. We have live music from 5 to 7, and during that time we do 25% off our bakery goods, and it's just a great time to come, hang out, hear live music. So she was the first one to join us for that. So just a big thank you to Julie for that. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Julie Campbell. Hey Islanders, it's Brandon with the Camano Voice. And today I'm here with a local fiddler, a member of the South End String Band, and the first musician to grace our first Fridays. Please welcome Julie Campbell.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, Brandon.
Good. Well, I'm so glad that you could join me on the podcast. So before we get started with everything, tell us a little bit about Julie Campbell.
Well, I've lived here on Camano for a little over a year, and I absolutely love it here. And I won't get too into detail. I know some of your later questions are going to ask me where I like to hang out and things like that. Let's suffice to say, I really, really am enjoying being here. Big transition a year ago. I got married. And
congratulations.
Thank you. My husband, Mike Hilly, has lived on the island for over 20 years.
Wow, okay.
So we met through music and bluegrass music. More on that later, I guess. Over a year ago, I decided to relocate up here, and that sort of came around with our marriage and our new life. Where I moved from couldn't be more different than Camano Island. I lived for 28 years in the heart of Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure many people feel this way. It's kind of hard to get down there now because of all of the I-5 traffic that certainly worsens as you approach Tacoma.
Right. You're right in the heart of that.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you what. But I do still have a house down there, and I've got 2 daughters. My younger daughter lives in the house with a couple of her friends who rent, and so far, so good on that one.
Nice.
My older daughter lives in Bellevue and works in Seattle, and those are my kids. Mike's got 2 grown sons who live in a house up in Ferndale, actually.
Okay.
In a house with a set of 2 other brothers. So anyway, we met through music, and that's the wonderful thing about bluegrass music is I don't know that I'll ever be hurting for friends.
Yeah.
Music brings people together all the time. And then I myself am actually the 9th of 10 children.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, part of a great big family. And believe it or not, even though we have our differences, we all get along.
That's awesome.
And go to a different, interesting place every 3 years for a family reunion. So,
okay. What are some of the places you guys have been to?
Oh, my goodness. We have been to Maine, the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee.
I've been out there. It's beautiful.
It was a great family reunion. We take a whole week, and usually a year, sometimes even close to 2 years in advance, we actually book the houses, because for all of us and our kids, and many of us have kids who have families, cousins, whatnot, we need to have many houses rented.
Yeah,
so
and you have to have good planning for everyone to get out there.
Yeah, well, and a very special one was last summer in Northport, Michigan, which is in Michigan, they call that area up north, which
Okay.
is different from the UP. It's the Leelanau Peninsula. It's near Traverse City.
Okay.
And it was there on the shore of Northport, Michigan, that Mike and I got married.
Oh,
with
very
my
cool.
entire family
Wow.
present, all my siblings and kids and everything. So that was very special. We've had a couple of reunions out here. One at Black Butte, Oregon, and one in Sun River.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's awesome for your wedding to be able to have your whole family there, because that's such a, it's so hard to get that many people on the same page and schedule and everything.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
great to be able to link that up with your reunion. And
Yeah, the reunion was already planned, and
Yeah.
we just sort of superimposed the wedding on that. But my siblings were thrilled.
yeah, well, then you get it's really cool, because that's like you get then the whole week to kind of celebrate and hang out, because most weddings you have it's a few hours long. You say hi. Other sides of the families are meeting for the first time, and then
Yeah.
it's over and it's done. Like having a whole week to just enjoy that time.
Yeah, it was great.
That's a great way to do that. Well, very cool. So now we've learned about your family. Do you have a career outside of music? I've actually never talked to you about that.
I certainly do.
Okay.
And it's transitioned somewhat, but here we go. For 32 years in a row, I was a full-time high school English teacher.
Okay.
And the first 4 years were in Ohio, which is where I'm from, Northwest Ohio,
Okay.
originally.
Yep.
And I taught for 4 years in Toledo, Ohio, 2 years at a big public high school, 2 years at an all-boys Jesuit high school. And then that was the connection for me getting a job in Tacoma, Washington, at the Jesuit high school that's there, Bellarmine Preparatory School.
Got it. Okay.
And now, I guess you can say I retired, at least for the time being, from full-time high school English teaching.
All right.
And last October, I began substitute teaching over in the Arlington School District.
Okay.
And
Nice.
I absolutely love it. So
Good.
here I am, totally at home in the high school classroom. I mostly have taught juniors and seniors, although over my 3+ decade career, I did teach all 4 grades, mostly juniors and seniors. And now I can say I've become more comfortable in middle school and also even in the elementary school. In fact, this summer, we can say I graduated for a moment from substitute teaching, and I was actually a regular classroom teacher in Arlington for their summer literacy camp.
Okay.
Which,
Yeah.
they offer that program, great program, free for students, and encourage for students who are struggling, maybe not quite at grade level.
Yeah.
And it's for students in K through 5. I was the teacher of the 4th and 5th grades, so it was fun.
Was that a lot different for you?
It wasn't. You know, teaching 10th graders really prepared me well for the 4th and 5th graders. So, sorry if any of my former 10th graders, unlikely that they would be listening to this. They're down in Tacoma. But honestly, that did prepare me well.
Yeah.
And I guess something else about me is I'm always up for something new. I'm up for something new. I'm up for a challenge, even in my career. I did lots of different things. And what led me to teaching to begin with was there were so many things I loved. I have so many different passions, and I didn't really want to have to give any of them up. And I thought teaching is a way to be able to keep those alive, because I'd want to find ways to incorporate music, for instance. And so case in point, last summer when I had the literacy camp, these aren't kids who are, you can call it camp, but they know it's summer school.
Yeah.
And they're, they have, let's just say, they have mixed feelings about having to go into a classroom in the summer. So I'd spice it up with a few things to help make it enjoyable and maybe even a little fun. One of those things was I acquainted them with the fact that I play the fiddle.
Okay.
And so, first of all, we would start every day with me playing the national anthem, and they were so cute, it cracked me up. They'd stood up and very, very stoically put their hands over their hearts, and it was the most serious I ever saw them. So that was totally cute. But then I shared with them that I could take requests and that I'd love to learn some of their favorite songs. And so if any of them wanted to challenge Ms. Campbell to learn a song for the next class, and the classes, there weren't many of them. They were 3 hours long, took place on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
So I had a couple of days.
Yeah.
And every day they'd give me a different request.
Okay.
So I learned Old Town Road, the song of the summer. I learned, a lot of their popular songs.
Yeah.
So it was really cute.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yep.
That's fun. Yeah, well, and it's nice, too, to be able to throw in a little bit of extra stuff for them because, it's not... I've done summer school. I mean, through college and stuff, I took courses. And, you're like, everyone else is enjoying summer right now, and I'm going to class. So,
yes.
Adding anything extra to it, adds that to it.
Yeah, so.
So that brings me around. How did you actually get started with fiddle playing then?
Well, in the 4th grade, when I was 9 years old, the music teachers came to my classroom, and they acquainted all of us with the string family. And I actually started on the viola.
Okay.
And I played the viola. I don't remember this story, but my parents tell me that at the end of 1 year, I wanted to quit. And, stringed instruments, violin, viola, probably any of them from the orchestra family, are not very forgiving.
No, yeah.
They're kind of rough to begin with. So my parents said, we were okay with letting you quit after a year. They had to hear me practicing in the house.
Yeah.
And my teacher said, absolutely not. Julie's got something. I know it sounds rough right now, but she's great. She's right where she should be. She's surging ahead. Do not let her quit. And I couldn't be more grateful. Music's given me so much. So I stayed with it and played all through the rest of elementary, junior high, high school, even though I didn't major in music and hadn't intended to. I continued in college.
And was this still with the viola throughout that time?
This was still the viola.
Okay.
All viola. On the side, as I played and practiced my orchestra music, and I had a few different private viola instructors. My senior year, I even made it into the Ohio All-State Orchestra.
Oh, very cool.
And I was seventh chair. And I want to emphasize that. You don't have to be first chair or even in the front row to have music be central to your life and just stick with it throughout your life. So I was really proud of that. And my parents always just praised me to the skies for these achievements and didn't, they weren't like, oh, why didn't you get first chair? I was 7th out of 10, and my parents were real proud of that in the whole state. So I continued it into college and even got a tiny little drop in the bucket scholarship in college, made a lot of music friends, and so that was important to me to be able to have these kind of ready-made connections when I arrived at the university. It was a wonderful experience. I not only played in the orchestra, but they had an opera series. I played in the pit orchestra for the operas.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of fun road trips to nearby towns with the opera. So some great memories.
Yeah.
And yeah, always on the side, I would love to be up in my room and play along with records. And I'd play along with the Beatles, with Jackson Browne. Later, when the 80s hit, I'd play with John Cougar Mellencamp, and I just,
that's awesome.
The B-52s, all sorts of things. Little did I know that was paving the way for a couple of years after I graduated from college. I was teaching in Toledo, Ohio, and the first year I was there, I did play in a little local community orchestra. That was fun, very familiar to me. I'd always been in orchestras. But a buddy of mine acquainted me with, actually, it's such an intertwined story, a former teacher of his at, interestingly, the Jesuit all-boys school, where I would later teach.
Yeah.
His English teacher every Thursday night played out in a local bar. He played the guitar, did mostly covers, some originals, and had a woman who sang amazingly as his music partner, and she had percussion instruments that she also contributed.
Yeah.
Well, they were known as Tom and Linda. And I became kind of a groupie, every Thursday night. It was something in the week to look forward to, and there was a nice group of friends who'd go out and listen to this duo and visit with each other and whatnot. And I used to kind of BS around with Tom and say, oh, I should jam with you guys sometime. Not like I'd ever done that beyond jamming alone in my room with my, seriously, with vinyl records. And one Thursday during the break, Tom comes over and he says, Julie, Linda's job is sending her away for, to another location. And so I'm going to need another music partner. When can we get together? You said you can jam. And I thought, uh-oh. Let's see if my viola hands can pay on these checks my mouth has written. And so he suggested the Bob Dylan Desire album, which is, a lot of people I've learned are familiar with that. He did one kind of well-known song off of that album is Hurricane, another one, Oh Sister, One More Cup of Coffee, and the woman who sings backup on that, of course, is very well known, Emmylou Harris.
Okay, yeah.
And he suggested a couple of songs off of that record. And by gosh, I went home and just, I crammed for the test, right? We were good friends, so it wasn't really all that much pressure.
Yeah.
But the very first song that I ever played in front of anyone else other than just in my room that wasn't orchestra music was One More Cup of Coffee by Bob Dylan off of the Desire album. And that's what we opened up with there in the Ottawa Tavern in Toledo, Ohio, after Linda went away. So it was that was the start. I didn't know it at the time, but it was the start of playing with other musicians, performing in that way. And I continued that for just the couple more years that I lived in Toledo.
And how was that, like, how was the first performance? How did that feel and go? And
I absolutely loved it.
That's kind of what I expected.
I absolutely loved it. Again, it was very familiar. It was right there in the, in the Ottawa Tavern where I'd been going. All my friends were there. And it was great. So that was actually the second year that I lived in and taught in Toledo. So I was still at the public school. I then interviewed at the school where my now music partner, Tom, was the English department chair. And I'm interviewing for an English position.
Yeah.
And here I am in the interview, and here's my music partner as part of the panel interviewing me. So it was an interesting dynamic. And then the gigs just got super fun because, not to say his colleagues had not before come out to see him. They had many times, but now they were our colleagues, and we were colleagues. So he was my English department chairperson.
Okay.
And it was just wonderful. And to me, what impressed me the most and probably kept me in music was that connection among people.
Yeah. I find that in the arts that seems to be a strong case, and I think this is true among lots of different groups of, whether it's music or dancing. Because my wife and I actually when we first started dating, we were going swing dancing every Thursday.
Oh, wonderful.
And we went to Grange and Cedar Woolley, and they still do that today. And we would go dancing, but we would get a good core group of people that we would just go swing dancing with.
Yeah.
And when we went off to college in Pullman, we got in touch with I forgot who introduced us, but we found out that there was a swing dance group in Moscow, Idaho, which was right next door to Pullman.
Yeah.
And so we would go over there, and immediately you become friends with these people, and you get to dance with them, and you're around them all the time. And it's just, you already have that connection. So then you guys just immediately are friends, and you get to build that rapport right away. So I find that within the arts and other groups as well, but definitely it's very strong in the arts that once you find that core and you have that same interest, it's really easy to build those friendships.
Absolutely. And when I moved to Tacoma, there's actually very well-known cafe in Tacoma, restaurant cafe, coffee shop, called the Antique Sandwich Company.
Okay.
And I think it was Tuesday night, they had an open mic, and a lot of folksy acoustic musicians would go out and play, and I went and attended for a while, and it actually was broadcast on the radio as well, and kind of overseen by this organization, Victory Music. And I've met a couple of people, even here on the island, who have been part of Victory Music and have played in the Antique Sandwich Company. But yes, on my viola, I would just go up and play some songs that I'd kind of put together, not composed exactly, but my arrangements of maybe some Celtic songs, some folksy songs, some rootsy songs that I'd heard. And of course, an open mic, you get maybe 3 songs, you know, 2 or 3 songs. And so it was just right. But I was starting to establish this network and meeting people and hearing about the kind of music they enjoyed. Mm-hmm. Little by little, I became aware of bluegrass. And I say aware because once I was aware, I realized it had been all around me all along. Mm-hmm. Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, of course, that's more to the south, is home, for instance, great bluegrass guy Larry Sparks is from Dayton, Ohio. And a lot of people from Appalachia kind of migrated north, and they brought that music up north. They'd go up to work in the auto plants in Detroit, but they'd bring their music with them. And so once I started making these connections in Tacoma through that Victory Music Circle and the open mic, hearing about their interests in music, which in a lot of cases, went into the bluegrass, that got me interested. And but I also was raising my kids. And so honestly, Brandon, there was, I think, 2 whole years where I didn't even open the case, except my annual tradition, the day right before Christmas vacation, I would take my viola in and play for my classes because the kids were off the wall. Yeah. And I subscribed to the music soothes the savage beast. And it was true. And I learned how to play Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix on the viola. And they absolutely, they were over the moon about that, and they loved it. And that word kind of got out, and it was after this very dry spell that it was my own students that got me really back into music.
That's awesome.
A boy comes up to me and says, "Ms. Campbell, our theme for homecoming this year is the best homecoming ever. And we've got big plans, and we're going to have a rock concert at the homecoming assembly." And he mentioned one of my colleagues. Wonderful. Teachers are such eccentrics. I just love it. I love it. I love teachers and teaching. My wonderfully eccentric colleague who is a major Who fan, they'd gotten him to do, most people know this song by the name of Teenage Wasteland. Okay. But it's actually called Baba O'Reilly. Okay. And the boy approached me, said, we've got, your colleague he's agreed to sing Teenage Wasteland, and would you please play the gypsy fiddle part at the end? Don't say no. You'll be great. He reaches into his pocket. He pulls out a cassette tape. He goes, "I've got a recording of it. Here, you'll be great." And I just really couldn't say no. He was so enthusiastic and adorable. And so I thought, well, okay, what the heck? And so I did it. And then another colleague of mine's husband, who played the guitar, on an off chance happened to be at that assembly. And we did feel like rock stars. They had like a fog machine behind us. I didn't, I kind of came down steps at the end of the song with, I had my viola still amplified. Anyway, this husband of a colleague saw me, seriously met me immediately, like sideswiped me after the assembly and said, "I play the guitar, let's get together and jam." And so that started me playing again, kind of playing out. And it was within another year of that I contacted a local bluegrass teacher who himself an eccentric and not above teaching me bluegrass on the viola. And that sounded kind of funny, but one day I went to my lesson and he was playing a violin, and it blew my mind. And I said, how much would it cost me to get a playable violin? What do you think? He goes, I've got one in the other room. I'll let you borrow it, and if you like it, I'll rent it to you for $10 a month. I came back to my lesson the next week. He goes, where's the viola? I go, oh no, Terry. It's all about the fiddle now. and that was it. That was it. I still have my viola. I play it every now and then, but I progressed very rapidly on the fiddle, and my teacher, Terry, got me connected with a band, the Looking Glass Bluegrass Band.
Okay.
And I was with them for about 4 years, and then was with a pretty popular band in the region, Deadwood Revival, for about 4 years. And we performed quite a bit in Bellingham, as a matter of fact. In fact, the first time I ever set foot on Camano Island was when I was playing with Deadwood Revival. We'd played a show in Bellingham, and one of the bass player in the band, his family has a cabin on Camano.
Oh, very cool.
So after the gig, we came here and crashed in the cabin and whatnot. So, yeah, just
Very
all
cool.
the connections.
So a quick question, and this is probably a really dumb question, but it's one that I always get confused on. So a fiddle and a violin are the same instrument, right? Is there a different, is it just style of play, or is it the way you tune it, or is there...
It is just style of play.
Okay.
Yeah, that is it. Now, I didn't always know what I'm about to share with you until I started taking lessons, that there's a distinction between bluegrass and old time.
Okay.
So those are two similar but distinct styles of music. And I bring that up because if you play the old time fiddle, there is actually a tradition of what's called cross-tuning, so that you would retune the fiddle to allow more access to certain combinations of notes.
Okay.
But it's not a tradition in bluegrass to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just run with the same. That's interesting.
There are some funny answers to that question, though. So, what's the difference between a violin and a fiddle? No one cares if a beer gets spilled on a fiddle. That's one. A violin has strings. A fiddle has strings. So, those are some differences.
Yeah.
But really, if you're a fiddler, then you're playing a fiddle. If you're a violinist, you're playing a violin.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
But
my
it
kids,
is style of music.
Yeah. Both of my girls have violins that were handed down to them. I think they're either half size or 3/4. And they we've been doing piano, and we took a break from piano this year, and now they're asking when they can start violin. And so, but what you mentioned at the beginning of it's rough in the beginning, I'm just a little worried. But no, I think at some point we'll definitely have to let them try it out and see how they enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So.
And don't let them quit.
Yes.
Don't let them quit, even if you want them to. Get a soundproof room instead.
Yeah, we'll work on that. All right, so now I want to change to the South End String Band.
Yes.
How did that get started?
Well, I happen to have here a book on the South End String Band. It's called South End String Band, The Early Years. And it goes way back. So I'd like to read from the South End String Band themselves.
Yeah.
Their statement about
All right.
the start of this band. In the beginning, silence covered the earth. No sound emanated from the backwash of Camano Island. In the spring of 2002, the first noise was heard. It was scratchy and cacophonous. They called this the South End String Band. It was primitive music. Okay, it was pretty awful. A few months later, they were a group of about 15 or so. When the dust finally settled, they had 11, give or take. That summer, they played the Thai store parking lot, their first public appearance. The rest, as they say, is the stuff of legend, in their minds at least.
That's a perfect statement.
I thought so. And, certainly at the advent of that band was Eric Schweiger, who is a local firefighter. He's a captain with Camano Fire.
Okay.
And that's actually how he plays the fiddle. And he's also a local luthier. So a luthier is one who makes stringed instruments.
Really?
So he
Okay.
actually makes, Eric Schweiger violins. Although he's made at least one viola and maybe a cello, I'm not sure. But his career is he's a firefighter and recently promoted to captain.
Very cool.
And my husband, Mike Hilly, on mandolin, met him when he was working with Camano Fire. So his career has been paramedic, and he currently is the EMS manager for Whatcom County. So he works up in Bellingham, commutes up there. Not a bad commute.
Okay. Nice.
And then undoubtedly the person who wrote the statement, a real character, Jack Archibald.
Yes. Okay.
And yes, he's a local glass artist and just person about the island, Skeeter Daddle, the famed Skeeter Daddle, who writes for every issue of the Crab Cracker.
Okay.
So you can read more of that folksy style of writing in every issue of the Crab Cracker. But he captured the beginnings of the South End String Band. For myself, I consider myself sort of an adjunct member of the group. I don't necessarily play every gig. But my first show I played with the South End String Band was at the Floyd Nygaard Center in town, and for the Historical Society. And I want to say that was in 2017.
Okay. So it was before you moved here then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But all told, I've probably played, just a handful of gigs with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are they still at right around that 11 members?
Oh, no. They, let's see, we've got Jack Archibald on the clawhammer banjo, Eric Schweiger on the fiddle, Monica Dinasha on the guitar, Don Malox on the bass, Mike Hilly on mandolin, and again, considering myself an adjunct fiddler, the second fiddler, myself on fiddle when I can make it.
Yeah, very cool. And we actually had Don Malau play the last First Friday here.
That's right. Yeah.
So he was great. I had to run off because my wife is out of town. So I had to go pick up the kiddos. But loved the setup and everything. It was really neat.
Awesome.
So, well, very cool. What is the favorite song you have composed, and is there a story behind it?
Well, funny you should ask. I don't really consider myself a composer.
Okay.
But I liked that question because it reminded me that I actually did write one song
Okay.
way back when on the viola. This would have been in the late 80s, I think probably 1988. I wrote an instrumental song, and incidentally, I ended up playing it for very dear friend's wedding, and those friends who now live north of Portland, they actually are going to be visiting me and Mike. They're arriving later today.
Oh, very cool.
So they're still together. It was a great song.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm sure it was the song that did it.
Yeah, it was, just a very soulful, kind of folksy, Celtic-y sounding song.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fellow who I was first in a duo with, I contributed some input on a song, I guess, that we wrote together called Night Train. So I did help with that. But other than that, honestly, Brandon, you don't quite call bluegrass traditional songs cover tunes. I play covers. They're not exactly covers.
You always put your own twang to it.
But yeah, you put your own, as it were, yes, the own twang. But I do play a lot of traditionals, fiddle tunes. If you go, this one of the things I love about bluegrass is you go to a festival, and there was a great one. I highly recommend it. It'll be an annual festival in this area outside of Bellingham at the Deming Log Show grounds.
Okay.
It was just a couple weeks ago.
And what was it called?
The North Cascades Bluegrass Festival.
Okay.
So there were literally hundreds of people camping in their mostly RVs and trailers and some tents. Hundreds of people camping and then visiting around, going around to all the campsites and jamming with people. And you learn new songs because people have their specialties that they play. And there's this whole system of numbers that you come to learn that helps guide the ability to jam with other people. It's called the Nashville number system.
Okay.
And so you could say to someone, okay, this next tune, it's in A. It starts on the 4, and then it goes 4, 1, 5, 1. At the chorus, it's on the 1, goes to the 4, then the 5, back to the 1. And this makes sense to the people who are there.
I was going to say, it's like a different language.
It is a different language. And so you do not see people at these jams typically with their head in written music. You'll see notebooks. You might see some charts. You might see some music. It's okay. No one's going to look askance. But a lot of people, as you may expect, there are a lot of retirees who are into this because they travel all over and go to these different festivals. So the need for anyone to have words printed out is, the struggle is real on remembering words. But, the way that people come to learn these songs is really through knowing chords, knowing keys, and knowing that Nashville number system.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
So were you guys there to just hang out?
Well, I was actually playing on stage in a band that I perform with sometimes in the area called Heron and Crow.
Okay.
And they're a bluegrass band, but they also, kind of the band leader, guitarist Stephen Dolmetz, is a wonderful, wonderful songwriter. And so that band, a feature of that band is they do a lot of original songs by Stephen.
Okay.
And so that is always a real treat to play with them. He's actually in Barcelona now for 3.5 months.
Wow.
And but when he gets back in December, I'll be performing with them again at Anelia's Kitchen in La Conner.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've performed with them at Boundary Bay Brewing and Colshan Brewing
Yeah.
up in Bellingham.
Very cool.
Yeah. And the Rockfish in Anacortes. So I guess a couple of times.
Okay.
And then my band that I perform with pretty frequently, including next weekend, I think if Friday is the 20th, next Friday the 20th, I'll be at Boundary Bay Brewing with the High Mountain String Band. And, you can look them up online. They have a website, and they do list me as the fiddle player. So
Well, there you
there
are.
you go. In a year out in this area, I've made some wonderful connections. And again, I come back to that's what music is really about. Is I think even people who don't play music, music connects them. If you're meeting people for the first time,
Yeah.
if there's music playing or you can go to a performance together,
Right.
that is a fast track to really being able to connect with people, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's very interesting if you ever get into like this study of like the psychology of music, of like what it does to the brain and all that stuff.
Yes.
I've listened to some podcasts and interviews and stuff about that, and just how it influences, like there's been certain like dictatorships and stuff where they crack down on music because they realize that's what makes movement happen in different things. So it's fascinating how it's something that we've, everyone listens to it at some point, you hear it. A lot of times it's more background, but then it can completely change how how you feel, your mood, all these different things. And so, no, it's very, very cool. I always end the podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And so I wanted to jump into those. So the first one is, do you have a lesser known or hidden location on Camano that you like to hang out?
Well, I thought about that, and it was about this time last year. And of course, last year at this time, it was the first September that I had not been in a school situation since before I was 5 years old. Because I'd always either been a student, always. I went straight to college from high school. I actually signed my first teaching contract before I graduated from college. So every fall, every September, there I was in the classroom. So a special, special place on Camano Island for me is down at Camano State Park. And if you park in, there's a certain parking lot that if you park in it, and you can kind of walk down these stairs to the beach and go off to the right. And there's driftwood, and it's just kind of got this hidden cove quality to it. I went all on my own on a Friday in September, and it was intensely sunny, and I had a blanket and some snacks and a book, and I just sat myself right down on that beach, and really enjoyed this Camano Island home. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Another place that I discovered recently, and I don't know that either of these are necessarily hidden. I'm sure others know the wonders of Camano State Park, Cama Beach State Park as well. Both wonderful places I love to go to.
Mm-hmm.
But I recently discovered the Iverson Spit.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a beautiful
Yeah.
beach. It's like our only quote unquote sandy beach on Camano because most of them are pebble beaches.
Yeah,
Um,
I absolutely
And then
love
they've got
it.
that trail in the back if you ever go to the Hobbit Trail.
Now I've heard about that, but I
Yeah.
haven't. That's next on my list.
Yeah, it's actually my wife and I did our wedding photos throughout there and at Iverson Beach. But
Oh, nice.
that little trail is really neat when you walk through it. It really does feel like you're walking through a Hobbit trail. Or, like the trees, everything is grown up and over you.
Oh, wow.
And it's just a great trail. And especially when you go in summer and it's like really hot outside, you walk through it, it just immediately cools down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such a nice little trail. So I love that trail.
Wow.
So it's fun. Yeah, definitely check that out. All right. Pretend you have a friend who is coming from out of town. What would the first day on Camano look like here?
Well, and it's not simply because I'm sitting here talking with you, Brandon, but I recently saw the beautiful pastries downstairs,
Mhm.
and I'm well acquainted with the wonderful coffee and coffee creations right here at Camano Roasters, and I would either get said pastries and we would have some in my home, or we would trek, because I just live around the corner from
Yeah.
here. I'm very close. But we would have to make those pastries part of the start of our day.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure I could do all of these things in one day, but it's a hypothetical question, so I'm allowed. I would have to include Tapped, which, of course, I recently discovered because it's a recent addition.
Yeah.
I'm sort of addicted to the bacon jam burger.
Yes.
It's so amazing. So, and it's just a great place.
It
Went there
is.
with some friends not too long ago. We had a great time. So that would be included. And then beyond that, and I have had, some out-of-town friends and family have come, and typically we have gone to Camano State Park and walked around there. A little plug for Cama Beach. They have a wonderful music series.
Okay.
And I've a couple different, when you first asked that, I thought of times when I've had out-of-town guests,
Yeah.
and it's happened to coincide with a performance at Cama Beach.
Do they have certain days of the week they do it, or?
These were both, I think, on a Friday. I'm not sure. I just know that they quite evidently have a commitment to hosting music.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
we've seen actually a wonderful fiddle and flatfoot dancing group. That was great, and some friends of ours actually that we met through the whole bluegrass thing, a duo called Squirrel Butter. There's a
Okay.
name. We saw them perform there, and actually the South End String Band plays there, or has played there annually for the quilts on the beach, as well as the Christmas concert, Christmas celebration that they have in December. So
Okay.
anyway, Cama Beach, I love because they seem to have music pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So those things, and now that I've discovered the Iverson Spit, I would take them and I'd say, let's find this Hobbit Trail. So
Yeah. That's great. All right. Who is a fascinating or interesting person in this community that I should interview next?
well, I have several answers to that question, but I really want to focus on one person. Her name is Lynn Ayers, and she's the executive director of the Stanwood Camano Food Bank.
Oh, okay.
So something that I didn't even get into is that I've been a volunteer at the Stanwood Camano Food Bank.
Okay.
I can't say enough good about it. And I volunteer regularly during the summer. Now that I'm a sub, I still volunteer, but they're okay with me dropping in as I'm able to.
Yeah.
So I typically volunteer on Wednesdays, which is one of their serve days. And it's just wonderful to be able to interact with the other volunteers there who are committed to making a positive difference for our friends and neighbors in need. And I just have always felt very strongly about the importance of giving back to a community, making a positive difference. And I've been so impressed with the Stanwood Camano Food Bank and everything that they do. Wonderful bunch of people. If anyone's listening, they always need volunteers.
Yeah.
They currently especially need volunteers from 2 to 4 on Friday afternoons to help stock for the Saturday morning serve. So they have a number of serves each week. And that's a need that they have. But the thrift store, everything that the thrift store sells helps to fund the food bank. And it's just, again, I'm just so impressed with that operation, and feel a strong commitment to social justice, and caring for other people.
Yeah.
So, yeah. See if you can contact Lynn.
Yeah, so I've been in touch with her for different things in the past, and yeah, I'd definitely love to get her on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, all right, and then lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island right as you're driving up onto the island, what would you have that say?
Want to learn how to play fiddle? Contact Julie at fiddlinj@gmail.com.
All right.
FIDDLINJ@gmail.com.
Perfect.
So
I'll have that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm right here on Camano and can work with people's individual schedules, as well as my own schedule.
Yeah.
But we'd love to pick up some additional students.
Yeah. How long have you been doing teaching? In fiddling.
Yeah, fiddle teaching. Off and on for, well, with fiddle, off and on for 15 years.
Oh, okay.
But even before then, I remember I taught a couple of people back when I played the viola.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. And what age group do you normally, what would you say is a starting age for fiddle playing?
I've taught primarily adults, but, I look to my own experience as far as learning a stringed instrument, 8, 9 years old, even younger. But yeah, I've had great luck.
Okay.
My best student, a young woman she's a high school English teacher. She joked, "I really want to become just like you, Julie." But she inherited a family fiddle and had never so much as picked it up.
Yeah.
And so I took her from that point all the way to the crowning achievement was she was able to participate in a jam at the Darrington Bluegrass Festival a few years ago. And that was, of course, very gratifying to her.
Yeah.
And so anyway.
That's
awesome. That was great.
Very cool. Well, before I let you go, it's just been, I want to let you know, like, with First Friday, it was something we wanted to start the first of every month and just kind of have a community night. And during that time, we started that right as Naked City had to close from circumstances. And so And so it was kind of like, oh no, like a lot of the options of community and within the complex that stay open late were gone during that time. And then I was kind of branching out into something that I'd never tried, as far as like, just starting a community night and not knowing what to expect or anything. And it's been so nice having you there, so many of them. And regardless if we have 1 or 10 people, like, you're the same you, and you just have such great energy that you bring to the place. And I really enjoyed having you here, and I'm glad you joined me on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Julie Campbell for joining us on the podcast, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And if you want to know more information about this podcast or previous episodes, go to camanocommons.com/podcast. That's camanocommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.